Hello, dear students, very good morning. In continuation of the explanation of the important passages from Macbeth, we are today with two passages which have been taken from the same act, that is the Act 1, but the different scenes are there. That is, the first passage is from scene 6 and the second passage is from scene 7. I think the background before these passages or before this scene is clear to you. Up to fifth scene, we have noticed how Lady Macbeth prepares Macbeth to commit the murder of King Duncan in order to fulfill his ambition. Here in scene number 6, we see that King Duncan, with his sons and lords and courtiers and attendants, arrived at the castle of Macbeth as he declared to spend a night at the castle of Macbeth due to his pleasure, due to his happiness that he got after having won the battle of uh, um, Norway. So here we have the lines for today. All our service in every point twice done and then done double were poor and single business to contend against those honors deep and broad wherewith your majesty loads our house for those of old, and the late dignities heaped up to them we rest your hermits. So these are the lines that we have for today's our explanation, and these lines have been taken from scene 6 of Act 1 of Macbeth. And King Duncan with his sons, his lords and his attendants has arrived in front of Macbeth's castle, and he is appreciating appreciating the castle of Macbeth. What he says in the beginning, he says that this castle has a pleasant seat. That is, he and Banquo is also with the king. Both of them feel very pleasant when they come and when they attend the castle or when they present at the castle. That is, they feel the air of peace in this castle. So in this way, they appreciate the atmosphere of Macbeth's castle. Then Lady Macbeth comes out to greet them. She comes out and she greets them. She welcomes them. And the king also greets her very familiarly and in all sincerity of love. Because the king is very much overwhelmed with the valor and courage and bravery shown by Macbeth in the battle. So, in this way, the king admires the castle, that the castle has a very pleasant seat. Then the king also addresses Lady Macbeth and he calls her as a fair and noble hostess. And he also asks to forgive him for the trouble he is giving to her. That is, he appreciates Lady Macbeth for her noble nature, for her fair beauty as well as, and he also excuses himself for the troubles that now he is giving to her. And what is the trouble? The trouble is that he has arrived or that he has become the guest of Lady Macbeth tonight. But Lady Macbeth also apologizes for the shortcoming in her services and she welcomes to the king very heartily. But this is arbitrary. This is the background of these lines. That is, the king arrives in the castle and he is received by Lady Macbeth. Here we have to see the point that Macbeth is not there. He is behind the curtain. He has not come out yet. So let's go with the lines, the explanation. So in these lines, we see the deceptive appearance of Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth welcomes King Duncan, no doubt, but she is cunning, she is deceptive. Her behavior, her manners, her conduct are arbitrary, are superficial. She is not welcoming the King Duncan from the heart, because we know, the audience knows very well what is there in the heart of Lady Macbeth. She appears very sweet and she appears herself she appears herself innocent like a flower. But in the heart, we know that there is a treacherous serpent which is ready to devour the King Duncan very soon. So it is we, the audience, the readers know that what's happening, what is going to happen to King Duncan very soon. So here, the behavior or the conduct of Lady Macbeth or the speech that she does in order to appreciate King Duncan is false. That is not from the bottom of the heart. But what is there bottom in the heart? There is a serpent that lies in the heart of Lady Macbeth, which is ready to devour King Duncan, to kill King Duncan very soon. So definitely it is the audience who knows that how King Duncan unconsciously walks into the den of his death. So he is not walking into the palace or the castle of the king, but he is walking into the den of his death, his own death. And this is we know. But the King Duncan doesn't know. So let us see how Lady Macbeth appreciates King Duncan in her polite and hypocritical speech. She appreciates. Here the playwright has used the hyperbole of the speech. The figures of speech, that is one of the figures of speech is important, that is the hyperbole, when you appreciate too much, over much. So what she says that all their services that her husband and she may render to the king is only a poor return for all the acts of kindness and favors which have been done by the king to them. That is, their services, their hostness is nothing, she says, before what the king actually had done for them now and in the future, now and in the past also. That is, she says that they are very much too much obliged of King Duncan's obligations. Then she says that their services are nothing. If they are double and then again they are doubled, they will be little and insignificant in front of what the king has done for them. So let us see how she appreciate how she praises King Duncan and how she responses the words of King Duncan. Then she says, they shall ever remain grateful to the king for all the past and present honors bestowed upon their families. And in this way, they are in the indebtedness to the king. That is that they owe the gratitude, thanks, and obligations of the king which is due upon them. Let us see the lines. If every point twice done and then done double were poor and single business to contain against those owners deep and broad wherein. So if that is 4 times done, whatever they are doing, that will nothing, that will be poor and single business to contain, to please the king, or to reciprocate whatever the king has done towards them. So against those honors deep and broad, so honors that have been bestowed by the king. Your Majesty lords our house. So she says that Your Majesty lords our house. That is, their house is grateful to the king. For those of old, the old honors, old obligations, as well as the recent obligations. And what was the recent obligation? That Macbeth was made the Thane of Cawdor. Heaped up to them, we rest your hermits. So she says that we are your hermits, we are nothing, and it is everything that is to you. So this is what they are in these lines. If we critically examine these lines, what we see? We see the labored rhythm and hypocritical overmuch of Lady Macbeth's welcome. How she uses the language and how she does the efforts, how she hypocritically speaks to Macbeth. So here, this is one of the quality that we have of Lady Macbeth's character. The speech is lip service. Lip service means that is in order to praise someone. In order to praise someone. So that is rich in hyperbolic expressions and forms a contrast with the genuine heartfelt speech of Duncan. So whatever Duncan speech or whatever he speaks, that is very much contrast to the speech given by the Lady Macbeth or the words of the Lady Macbeth. The words of the Lady Macbeth are the lip service, where whatever King Duncan speaks, that is from his heart. So often we see that hyperbole and hypocrisy go together. Next, what else we can bring out from these lines or this scene is that this scene is also one of the best example for the comic relief. Comic relief, this is the technique that is used by the playwrights, by the dramatist, in order to give relief from the tension, from the tragic scene and from the problems, and to their readers and to their audience. That is, they put some comic scene, comic actions, and comic comic activity that gives the relief to the audience. Here in the fifth scene, what we saw, that how Lady Macbeth makes ready Macbeth to commit the murder, how they plan, how she speaks, and how she acts like a man, a bold man. Macbeth is fearing, but she is very bold. So we were moving towards the tension that now it is going to, that the murder is going to be done. But then we have this comic scene, comic relief scene. So this provides us a little relief. But what at the same time, what else we see in this scene is that there is also tragic irony in the situation as well as its verbal expression. We know Duncan is praising the castle. So here the you see the situation is praising the castle, and the castle which is very soon now going to become his grave. That there his terrible end is going to take place. So this is the dramatic irony, we can say, or the tragic irony. And it is only the audience who knows that this place or this castle to which Duncan is praising is going to become his place of murder. Then we see how King Duncan offers courtesies and the kind words, and the same kind words and courtesies are offered Lady Macbeth. So these words, these kind words, are offered by King Duncan to Lady Macbeth. And who is Lady Macbeth? Lady Macbeth, who has the idea or the thought of King Duncan's murder in her mind. So there is the contrast, and this contrast or this contrary situations or this irony is identified by the audience only, and it is that this scene is now approaching towards the crime or the horror of the crime. So this is the explanation and critical examination of these lines. Now let us go with the next one. And next one passage is from scene 7 of the same act 1. And what are these lines? I recite them. If it were done when it's done, then it were well, it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequences and catch with its surceased success that, but this blow might be the be all and the end all here. But here upon this bank and shoal of time, we would jump the life to come. So these are the lines that we have to understand, we have to explain. It is clear that these lines have been spoken by Macbeth. And when the situation of this scene is that the dinner is in progress, the guests are taking the dinners and the hosts are busy in pleasing them, but Macbeth leaves this banquet. Macbeth leaves this place and he goes aside, and there he thinks over again the thought of murdering. And what he thought or what he thinks, that is expressed in these words. So this is in the aside where the characters who are present on the stage are not supposed to hear him, only the audience are supposed to hear him, what's actually happening in his mind, what actually he is thinking. So this is one of the best soliloquy of this play, spoken by Macbeth. So if it were done when it is done, then it were well, it were done quickly. It means, Macbeth says, that if the act of murder were completely finished, if this action is completely finished when they do it, then it would be a good thing that they should do it very quickly. That is, it should be done very quickly. If this act of murder is completely finished when they do it. That is, if it is to be done or when it is done without any problem, then it should be done with quickly. Then here we have the word tremble up. Tremble up means here clause. Surcease means here death, Duncan's death. Success here means success in securing the crown. These are some of the difficult words that we have in this passage. We should understand them. Then we have the might be, the be all, and the end all here. It means it might be beginning and the end of the whole affair. So Macbeth means to say that if the action is completed without any obstacle, and if it is done, then it is good that it should be done very quickly. And then there is the end, and the end is that the king is murdered and then he gets the throne of the Scotland, nothing else. Shoal. Shoal means a narrow strip of land between water. Bank and shoal of time means on the shore of this earthly existence. Jump the life to come. We would run the risk of taking up the punishment in the life and after death. So let us see. Let us see what is there. As I have told you that the meal for Duncan is continuing in the progress, and Macbeth leaves the banquet hall and stands aside to think of the deed he is about to do. He is frightened. He is frightened what it might lead to, that this action will lead to what, where this action will lead to them. And then we see that his wife comes from the hall to look for him, and she succeeds in convincing him that the murder can be carried out. So it is again Lady Macbeth who convinces him that nothing will happen, you have to commit this act. That is, she is there and she has planned everything, and nothing wrong will take place there, and nothing will happen to them, and they will be succeeding themselves in this act. So in these lines, let's see again that Macbeth is afraid of the consequence of murder. Macbeth doesn't worry about the future, but he is worried about the present. He is worried about the consequences of the murder. What will be the consequences, the result of the murder are horrifying him, are giving him horror, danger to him. Otherwise, he is not worried about the future punishments or about the punishments that will come into the another life or after this life. So he reviews the consequences of the act of murder, and he doesn't think on its aspect of guilt, but on the penalties which must follow it in this very life. So he also doesn't worry or think about the guilt that he is going to commit if he is called guilty, but he is worried about the penalties, or we can say the punishments, which will take place after this act in this very life. So the consequences which will take place after the committing murder of King Duncan in this very life are horrifying, are terrifying Macbeth. So because he knows that every crime is followed by punishment, and these are frightening him. So he says that if the murder of King Duncan would give no rise to further complications, he would have no hesitation to carry it, and so it would be better to do it quickly. So he is worried of the complications that will rise after committing the murder. He is not worried about the punishments that he will be given after this life. Therefore he says, if the consequences are not there, if the complications will not take place thereafter this, then it is better to do it quickly. But he also knows that a crime cannot be ended Rather, it moves to in a vicious circle and creates a series of complications. So Macbeth here knows very well that such crime cannot be ended. They cannot be stopped because after committing these crimes or after these crimes, the complications definitely arises. A series of complications are created, and those are very much frightening him and terrifying him. So he says that if the murder could be an end without any further consequences, he would be prepared to stake his life after death to secure the throne of Scotland. So he is ready to face the punishment, the torture, the consequences after this life, but he is not ready to face the consequences and complications in this life. So here we see that moral scruples also don't deter Macbeth. Only there is only fear of murder that is restraining him. Otherwise, the moral obligations towards King Duncan are not deterring Macbeth, are not refusing Macbeth. That is, he is not fear of them, but he is fear of only the consequences. Okay, so if we examine these lines critically, we can see that this is one of the best soliloquy in this play, and this soliloquy is very much superior to the famous soliloquy that we find in another play written by William Shakespeare, that is Hamlet. And what is that soliloquy? Which starts to be or not to be. So this soliloquy in this scene gives more dramatic effectiveness than the Hamlet's soliloquy. So, indeed, the soliloquy also gives us the impressions about Macbeth's character, that he is ready to murder the King Duncan, but he fears of the consequences. He is not bold to face the complications that will follow after the murder. It also furnishes rich groundwork for the dialogue which immediately follows between him and Lady Macbeth, and which advances the action to another stage, the stage where the murder of Duncan is eventually determined upon. So, this is the groundwork for the dialogue that is now going to take place between Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. We will see that Macbeth once refuses to go further in this action. He says, we shall not move further in this aspect, in this work. Next, we see that in this scene how Lady Macbeth will impress Macbeth, will again instigate Macbeth, and again will prepare Macbeth to commit King Duncan. That is, this scene is also called as the scene of temptation by the fourth witch. Some critics calls Lady Macbeth as a fourth witch because Macbeth now is not in a still mood or in a determined mood or in a fixed mood to commit the murder. So the temptation is given by Lady Macbeth. In this way, we can examine these lines of Macbeth from Act 1. Now the Act 1 is finished, and next time we will start with the Act 2, Scene 1 or Scene 2. Thank you very much for hearing me, and I welcome your questions, your observations, and whatever you would like to say me and ask me. Thank you very much.